Hey everybody, it's Richard with the Hunter-Gatherer Society, and I am out with my faithful companion Dozer. He's out of frame right now. He's exploring some of the water. It is end of September here in Southwest Florida, and as many of you know, I have been recovering from a very severe COVID case. I got double pneumonia over 2 months ago, double COVID pneumonia. Ended up in the hospital and almost didn't come home. Almost didn't get to forage anymore. But I made it out, and my last video I was home recovering, but I was sucking oxygen, couldn't get into the woods, and this is my first trip out into the woods since I got COVID. It'll be a little slow moving today. You know, it's almost October here in Florida, and so the trails are really wet, so I'm not sure how far we're going to get to go, and I'm not sure how many mushrooms we're going to find because of the fact that everything is so darn wet. The ground is really waterlogged. And so I'm looking for anything on stumps, trees, and any dry areas I'll spend a little extra time on. A lot of beauty berries out right now, and but we're gonna hit the trail, and we'll see what we can find. It's good to be back out in the woods. All right, guys, you can see it. This is high ground here, but you can see anywhere there's a low spot, it is filled with water. Works good for Doze. He's got plenty of water around, but not so good for the hiking. So we're going to get a little wet today. But I mentioned beauty berries. I have been seeing these as I'm driving all over the place. And as you can see here, and over in there, they are thick. And these are edible. They're not, they don't have a lot of distinct flavor to them. Matter of fact, they're, as a standalone, they're pretty bland. You can eat them, so if you're like me and you just want to try things just to see how they are, you can do that. They are edible. Most of the time, as far as what I can find, and all the posts I see this time of year, people are going to make wine or jam out of those. And apparently that's supposed to be very good. So I might try that one of these days. I'm not going to do it today. And just because I'm heading off on a trip on Wednesday, in about 3 days, I'm heading to California, so I don't want to start any real projects right now. But you can see the berries, they go around the stem, so that's how you identify them. Small berries, kind of purplish in color, in little clusters along the stem, and they'll wrap all the way around it, as you can see. So they're not out on the end of the leaf, they're not out on a separate branch, they're not dangling from anything, they're literally wrapped around that stem. So that's one of the key characteristics of those. But again, they are edible. And the primary use for them, as far as I can see, is jams, jellies, and wine. So, but they are all over out here. There's more there even. All over through here. So if I wanted to, I could easily get enough for a batch of wine. That's probably what I'll do at some point. I have never made a jelly. Maybe one of these days I'll try, but I do make some homemade wild fermented wines, ciders. Maybe I'll try that one of these days. Yeah, look at here. Like I mentioned, with everything being so wet, now these are pretty old, but with everything being so wet, the high ground, stumps, that kind of thing are going to be the key today. Again, I'm not bringing much home. Today is going to be more just about exploring and seeing. Really what I'm looking at is, this time of year with everything so wet, what can I find? But don't get me wrong, if I find enough for a meal, I might have some wild mushrooms today. But you can see those are growing off of an old piece of palm bark there. So I think that's what we're going to find. Berries down in there. Can't harvest those. Those are illegal to harvest here in Florida, unless you have a permit, which I do not. So we'll leave those alone. Man, what a beautiful morning out here. One of the reasons I chose today for my first stretch in the woods is that it's only about 75 degrees right now. And the humidity is supposed to stay down today, which of course this time of year, very rare. And he loves this water. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. Yeah, he loves to play in the water here. Oh, look at that. Everything's a couple days old. That's quite the collection there. Again, on logs, nothing on the ground so far. Everything's on stumps, bark, and fallen trees. I truthfully have not yet found a mushroom up on a tree, like up on the side. You know, in Minnesota, you find them, you know, find like oysters, chicken of the woods, things like that, up high on the trees. I haven't found anything like that here yet. Not sure if that's just not something that's down here in Florida, or if I just haven't found it. So, I don't know. If anybody knows, let me know. But so far, I haven't seen anything. Everything's down on the ground. And I think today that's going to be our theme. It is just too daggone wet. The ground is just too waterlogged. I think even on the high ground, for anything to, you know, to grow, might have to slow down. You can hear, it's been, like I said, it's been a little over 2 months since I began this battle with COVID. And you can probably hear that my breathing is getting I'm getting a little winded, so that'll be the theme today. And then this water, of course, will also be the theme. So, not sure how far I'm going to get. We got Caesar weed all over here. It's in flower right now. So Caesar weed is also edible, although, I mean, that would be your last resort. I'll give you a shot of the leaves here. That is edible. It does have some medicinal properties to it. The flowers actually are edible. These would be about the only things that you might use just as a salad decoration, because they're pretty small. The leaves are super tough, and I did try. I mean, you can cook them up and eat them if you want. Again, the leaves are super tough, and just no flavor. I tried doing some medicinal stuff with them, and it wasn't any better. So if you had to, in a survival situation, you could eat that, but other than that, that'd be about the only reason you would. I'm going to try to find a way through this water. Some kind of a berry back in here. Oh, you know what that is? Huh. Look at the leaves. The leaves. So guys, that is wild coffee. I've showed you that before. Again, you look for those kind of leaves with ripples on them always. It's kind of the identification. So wild coffee, not as exciting as it may sound. The berries are, I mean, technically speaking, they're edible. I've done some research on it. The results are mixed on what you can do with it. And when I say edible with that one, I mean you can make a beverage from it. It's more like a tea from my understanding. There is no caffeine in it. Now the biggest thing that I hear or read about is that it's bitter and it can cause stomach irritation. So I haven't found anyone who uses it or has tried it, and I have not used it or tried it. So, you know, the answer again, technically, yes, you can use it. Well, it's all along here. But if you do, holy cow, look at these guys. Man, I'm seeing a lot of these. I'm not sure, but man, that looks a lot like jack-o'-lantern. So if anybody knows, let me know, because that's just on a quick glance, that's what it looks like to me. Type of jack-o'-lantern species, which in that case they would be a poisonous mushroom. Very poisonous, actually. Anyway, the wild coffee. So if anyone tries it, let me know. Remember, anytime you try any wild food for the first time, use extreme moderation. You know, oftentimes even stuff that's considered poisonous, in very small, you know, if you do accidentally get something, but you only do it in very small doses, might just give you a little indigestion or a little diarrhea or something, you know. But I, for one, am going to pass because I haven't read anything that says, you know, anyone who says that they enjoy it. So oftentimes when I see, you know, mushrooms or wild foods that people say are no good, but are edible but are no good, I'll oftentimes try them myself, just because, you know, again, occasionally I find stuff that I like. Biden's Alba is probably a good example. Oh, these flowers are just beautiful all through here. Biden's Alba, I actually enjoy that, using it as a green and as a tea, as a base for tea, and but a lot of people don't. So, you know, I'm always willing to try stuff and give it my own rating before I make a decision. So, all right, on we go. Hey, bud. Dozer. He is soaking wet. He actually met a friend along the way. I should have filmed, but at first I was trying to, you know, just keep him away from the guy and his dog, but then they ended up playing together, and I had the camera kind of tucked away. Should have got it out. They ripped up a water puddle together. It was pretty entertaining to watch. So. Oh yeah. He loves that, huh? Can't wait to get you in the truck, huh, bud? Woohoo! Gotta love that. Life is good. On we go. Well, Dozer and I have decided to take a little rest. We found a little bench back here in the woods, so we're going to take advantage of it. It's starting to get a little warm. It's going to be 90 today, so it will heat up. The humidity is supposed to stay down, but you know, back here in the wet, that you can feel the humidity, and again, as that sun comes up, that temperature's starting to rise. So we won't spend too long back in here today. You know, between my breathing and the heat, I'm pretty good. I've done 2.4 miles as my longest stretch. I'm not doing it very fast, so these are slow walks, but I'm able to do it. My oxygen, you know, stays up. If it does go down, I just have to stop for a minute. But you know, we've been looking for some of the more normal mushrooms, and I sat down here on this bench, and I'm just sitting here enjoying the silence. And you got to pay attention, because you just never know where you're going to find them. So let me flip the camera around and I'll show you something. He's resting. He really enjoys this. All right, buddy? Yeah, he's looking for his friend George, aren't you? Play some more, yeah. So we're just sitting here on this little bench and look at this. And if you look carefully, you might be able to see the head of another one back there buried in that in those palm branches. And then around the palm there's just a really small LBM. So I sat here for a minute or two before I even noticed that. Well, we're going to rest here for a few minutes and we'll get back on that trail. Alright guys, before we head back out onto the trail, I wanted to touch base a little bit on a conversation that I was having online in regards to identification of some of these boletes. Now, I'm not going to identify this here today because this is not one of the ones that I'm most familiar with. But, you know, in that conversation we talked about some of the things that I look for in a bolete to identify it. So one of the first things that I must say on this is I often don't identify them in the field, because there are so many variations of boletes. It can be very, very, you know, challenging. But someone asked me, you know, what are some of the things that you look for? And so one of the things you can see here, I pulled this one. You can see that that is white, and then the rest of the stalk is brown. That's because that white part was actually underground. So I want to get the whole stalk when I pull those. And because you can see there's a little bit of a bulb there at the bottom. Now, there's not much on this mushroom. You know, so I would really say that that doesn't have a bulb, because when you find one that does, that will be rather large, and that for some species is a distinguishing feature. You know, also when you're looking at the stalk, you know, you're going to look for patterns on that. You know, is it scaly? You know, are there streaks running up and down? Is it solid and clear? You know, does it break real easy? Is it, you know, how thick is it? How thin is it? That stalk is going to really help identify and narrow down the species. And then of course our, you know, our pore structure. So what are the colors there? You know, is it yellow? Is it clear? And then the cap is really important. And so this is kind of it may look a little reddish in the camera, I'm not sure, but it's actually more of a brown. And you can see it's getting some spots on it, some darker brown spots, but there's no cracking on this. Now this is a little bit older mushroom. There's actually the second one back behind it was even older, but there's no cracking on this. Now like a Boletus campestris would actually, you know, as it gets older, it'll crack. And that's one of the things that help identify that species. And so, you know, that's very important. You know, the age of the mushroom, so if it's young, that's going to, you know, that's going to have an effect. If it's old, that's going to have an effect. So that's things you want to look at. So we want to look at that. The base, the stalk, the spores, the cap. And then, of course, the discussion really stemmed around, no pun intended there. Let me see if I can get this to break open. I'm not going to keep this one. You can see all the brown spots here, and you can see that the worms have gotten into this. All right, hold on just a second. Okay, so there, we've busted this one open. Now we're just going to give it a second. Now for what I'm doing here today, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time with this. But you can see that it's not turning blue. So the discussion was about blue staining boletes, and you know, there's a lot online about blue staining boletes. Some just say, you know, don't ever eat blue staining boletes. Some people say, you know, don't eat the ones that are fast staining, only the ones that stain slowly. You know, I find that not to be true. The truth to these boletes is there's a lot of factors that go into identifying them. And so, you know, I'm going to look at this stem. I'm going to look at the bulb at the bottom. I'm going to look at the stem. I'm going to look at the spores, or I'm sorry, the pores. I'm going to look at that cap, and then I'm going to look at the color change. And this one does not have any color change, and so that's going to be an important factor in deciding, you know, what species this mushroom is. And then one last note on these, and you know, anything with mushrooms, I don't recommend eating any wild food or mushroom that you haven't had ID'd by a professional. Or use multiple resources and a professional. There's my safety speech for the day. But for me, what I'll probably do in some of these cases with boletes is I will narrow it down to 2 or 3 species that are edible. So I'll eliminate all the ones that might have issues, whether they be, you know, bitter tasting, or maybe they might make you sick. There are very few boletes of this color that are going to make you sick. But that doesn't mean there aren't boletes that will make you sick this color. So I eliminate those by using all those different identification features, get it down to 2 or 3 that I know that it is, and none of those are poisonous. You know, none of those are going to make me sick or be too bitter for, you know. I'll take maybe a small piece, maybe half of a half, and just cut a few little, you know, 2 or 3 little slices up, and then I'll cook that up. If I've never eaten this mushroom before, this is where this applies. I'm going to cook those up, cook them very well. I'll eat those, and I'll wait 24 hours. You know, most of the time your mushroom poisoning is an allergic reaction. Not always, but oftentimes. And so wait to see if you have any reaction to that particular mushroom, and if you don't, then you should be good to go. Now, make sure your family members do that too. Don't you eat just a little bit and then feed them a plate full of wild mushrooms, because again, you may not have had a reaction, but they may. So I just want to take a minute and just touch on a few of those features of the bolete mushroom, and just kind of how I identify them, some of the things that I look for. Again, always remember, use multiple resources and consult with an expert. And by the way, typically mushroom forums online are not experts. So it's hard to identify things through pictures online. You know, you want to see the environment they're in. You want to see all these different features that we talked about. and that's very difficult to get online. So be careful and use some common sense. Use a lot of the different features. Use your resources. Do a little research at home, and you should be just fine. And again, these are enjoyable mushrooms, so they're worth the work. Time to get back on the trail. Of course, I get the video on and they go silent. Oh. Sounds a lot like sandhill cranes to me. I haven't seen them, but boy, they've been just cackling back there. So as I mentioned, it's just about October here in Florida, and for my northern friends, some of this won't apply. You know, in the north now, it's probably been dry for several weeks, and the temperatures are dropping. Deer hunting's underway. I just got the first picture last night from a young friend in Missouri who got a nice buck. I'll share that on the Facebook page here probably the next day or two. But beautiful buck. Boy, those are nice. Look at that bunch of beauty berries. Huh? That's a beaut. There's a bunch in here. Bunch down along the trail here. Anyway, I wanted to share a couple tips for hiking this time of year. And, you know, for here in Florida, we have the opposite. So it hasn't been dry. This is our rainy season. So it's been raining for several weeks, a couple months really. The ground is waterlogged, and ditches, any low areas are full of water. Now what happens here is we go into our winter dry season when all the tourists come down, and you know, of course it doesn't rain then, and so that water stored away in ditches and stuff lasts, you know, through the summer into the next rainy season. That makes hiking a little interesting. So of course, anytime there's water, you got bugs. So oftentimes during the dry season when I'm out here, I don't have any bug spray on, or I don't bring any. There just aren't any bugs. Today, I do have bug spray on. I didn't get very far in to the trail, and they weren't terrible, but they were already kind of being pests, all pun intended. And so I did use bug spray today. Good footwear. Dozer and I are ill prepared for today's adventure, and did not bring good footwear. So you want something that's waterproof and sturdy. You're going to be going through some puddles, so these are not my best choice for today. They're working, but they are soaked all the way through at this point. If you don't bring good footwear, have a backup pair. So luckily for me, I have a pair of slip-ons in the truck. I'll get these off, put those on. That'll make the ride home a little more comfortable. And it is hunting season. So if you're going to be out here, be out anywhere. Especially this does apply to the north. Know where you're hiking. And if they're, you know, pay attention to the cars out there. And if you know, if it's a hunting area, if it's deer season, put some orange on. You know, whatever, I guess whatever appropriate for the area you're in and the hunting that's going on, because you know, you don't want to walk up on somebody who who's hunting. So that's just a couple tips. There's nobody out here today hunting. We've only seen one hiker. Got some bug spray on and got a change of shoes. So and of course, you know, it's fall, so the deer are moving, the bear are around. For here, the panther are on the move. With all the water, they're going to stay to the high ground, so they're going to probably be on the same ground that you're on. And so, you know, have something with you, have some bear spray with you, have a big knife, have a gun if you're a gun carrier. But have something with you, because oftentimes the animals are liking the same high ground trails that you're using. We're going to carry on here. We're headed up towards the hopefully a little channel of water here, and then as this sun comes up, we're probably going to loop back the truck and call it, but I'll bring you back if I find something. The ever-present Biden's Alba. I just count on that to be around. I was kind of thinking, like, if you had to make something to eat out here and you weren't an expert, how well would you fare? It's an interesting time of year. After the summer, you would think it would be, with all the rain, it would be fairly abundant, as far as food goes, and it really is. But you really have to be an expert to identify, the different things that that you could eat. And so I'm thinking, this Caesar weed flower, these are everywhere. So the Caesar weed right now is absolutely huge. And you can see this has little balls on it, little fuzz. These will actually dry up, and those are the irritating things that stick to your clothes. So those flowers are edible. Of course, the Bidens is edible, and that bolete, again, I could do a little research on it and figure it out. I would wager that that one was edible. No blue staining, and the thin stem. Sorry guys, just kind of peeking back into the woods here. I saw some little mushrooms, trying to see what's back in there. Just with the characteristics that that particular bolete had, I think it's probably edible. So we have the flowers from the Caesar weed. We have the Biden's Elba, and of course the mushrooms. Sorry, we're getting around water now and I'm hearing stuff, so I got to keep my eye on him a little bit better. So you could put together yourself a little bit of a lunch here. You could make a little salad. You could cook it up. You could use the beauty berries in there for a little coloring and flavoring. And the more you know, the easier it is to put together. Doze, we're going to turn around. Doze, we're going to turn around. This trail is getting more and more wet, and we're getting, come here, stay out there. We're getting water coming up the trail. So, this time of year here in Florida, the fish and other water-bound creatures can move through the woods pretty easily. So during the winter months, they are confined to the ditches and channels and ponds. This time of year, you might find a gator in town, hanging out in a culvert where they just normally aren't at. So you got to really pay attention. So because of that, we're going to move Dozer out of here and not take any chances. So again, I was talking about lunch. You can see here, that's an edible vine. There's some smilex up there on top. Yeah. Loving them puddles. There's some smilex up there on those vines. And so much for keeping my foot, or letting my foot dry. So you could piece together a little trail meal out here. That's why it's important to carry your little cook stove with you. You guys have probably seen me out here. I've been a few occasions where I've stopped along the trail and cooked up a little lunch. Today we're not doing that. Again, today is just about testing my oxygen level and seeing how I do, and then also just seeing what's out here this time of year with all this water on the ground. I'm actually surprised. I have found more mushrooms than I expected. Again, we're not bringing anything home today because today's goal is just checking things out. There's the old ones. There's the new ones. But I tell you, it feels good to be out in the woods, moving around. Like I said, boy, if you're so inclined to make your own wine or jellies, this would be the time, man. There are beauty berries everywhere. This lily that I've showed a few times, I believe that to be a Cat's-bee's lily. I don't believe that to be edible. I'm not positive on that. Its close cousin, which I can't think of the name of now, starts with an A. Its close cousin is edible when cooked. And but again, the Cat's-bee's lily, which I'm pretty sure that's what that is. I don't have any idea to its edibility. But it has been all over along here. And in addition to different, a few different flowers, it's been a beautiful addition to the hike. As you'll see it, you can see it kind of wound in back there in the weeds, and it's been that way all through here. So absolutely beautiful. So sometimes, even though they're not edible, they sure are a nice addition to the day. Running out of dry trail here. So we didn't make it back to the canal. Both trails back there were completely underwater, and I'm not necessarily geared up for that today. And with Dozer here, I don't want to, be pushing my luck back in there with the gators. Not only the gators, but also the snakes, because just like the gators, they get on the move here. A lot of the normal dry ground areas are underwater, so their space is a little more limited. And there are, poisonous water snake here in Florida. So you have to be ever vigilant and keep your eyes open. Last year at this time, Dozer and I got chased off a trail by a snake. So definitely want to pay attention. Goofball. Okay. It's like an artist conch. Not edible, but beautiful mushroom. Old batch of something. Again, I mentioned I haven't seen really found anything growing up on the trees. The down trees, yes, but not the standing trees. And I'm accustomed to looking up from my, all my trips in the north. Boy, he's a beast. He's old. He's a big one. Accustomed to looking up. And I just haven't had that be the case here, which I find very interesting. So this must be their season. I'm finding them big orange mushrooms everywhere. I'm going to have to do a little research on those to confirm whether those are or are not jack-o'-lanterns. If anybody knows watching this, let me know. They sure look like them. We're gonna get talked to here. See if we can get you a shot of him. Hear him? He's telling us what he thinks of us. Big hawk. A pretty good view up there. Get out of my hunting ground, man. Messing it up. Oh, some shade. That's good. That sun is getting hot. So that shade is a welcome addition to our trip. Like Dozer's feet are getting wet. Holy cow. Look at the size of that artist conch. See the white bottom? That's why it's called the artist conch. You can take your fingernail or a stick and you can draw on that. Kids find that very amusing. What? What, you got the zoomies? Whoa! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness, you got the zoomies? Oh yeah, where's your friend George? He likes doing the zoomies with you. So George is the dog that we met along the way. You got to play with a little bit, never did get him on film. I always meet new friends out on the trail. Sun's up, it's getting loud out here. It's just me looking at mushrooms, bud. Although we both heard something in there. Ouch. Ooh. Got attacked by an old greenbrier branch. These suckers are sharp. Look at all the wild coffee along here. I did actually see some ripe berries. Also noticed this. So in a lot of the videos we talk about greenbrier. Of course I chase smilax quite a bit. And greenbrier just attacked my leg back there a little bit ago. This is another variety of greenbrier. Typically you'll see these reddish colored leaves, but you'll notice the shape of the leaves is the same. And you'll also notice that the veins start at the base and run all the way up the leaf, all the way to the tip. Again, signs of that species. Look at the stem on him though. See if I can get a good shot. That guy has self-defense. Those thorns are hard and sharp. Now that is an edible plant. The leaves when they're young are green. As they get bigger they turn red. And the red leaves are they're really firm. They're tough. You wouldn't want to eat them. The green ones are soft. You could eat those. And usually if you're out hiking here and something rips into your ankle, you found one of those. This time of year they seem fairly common. So keep an eye out for them because again they can damage an ankle and make for an unpleasant moment in your day. But again, it is an edible plant, so you could eat the leaves. And look at this guy. He's coming out to do some sunning. A friend up there who's already out and about. Everybody's coming out to enjoy the morning sun. Look at all those Caesar weed flowers. They're pretty. Now these like I said, are edible. They don't really have much flavor to them. There's just no real distinct flavor at all. They're not really sweet or they're not green. They're very simple. So they're not going to be something you're going to add to a meal for the flavor of them. You know, you're simply going to, it would be very decorative. Like I said, like on a salad. It'd be a beautiful addition to a dessert or a salad. Yeah, not bad, not great. Just is. It is edible, so. But there's a ton of them in here. You could definitely harvest a batch of them and make a nice dessert. But look down here too. Young reishi coming up. The medicinal realm isn't one I delve into too much. I do some, you know, tinctures and things like that, but not too often. But I would think that the young ones would have the best medicinal property. Oftentimes the edibility of plants and mushrooms is better when they're very young. So if anyone knows, if anyone harvests those for their medicinal benefits, let me know. It'd Be interesting to see if the medicinal side carries, you know, across to the edible side as far as, again, being young, being better. So either way, cool find. And a beautiful day to be out. There's some hardwood trees. I peek around there. Let's go over there and take a look, see if there's anything in there. It's wet behind them, so not much high ground there. I do not see anything hidden in there. I always look for those hardwoods. The boletes like those. Come on, bud. Whoa. Look at that tree. Just covered. Couple young ones over here, just getting their start. On the road again. Going through the wet trails, just me and my friend. I'm so glad to be on the road again. See why I have a day job. Definitely don't get paid for my singing skills. Beautyberry. Again, nothing real stand out on those berries. They're not like, you know, a blueberry. You're going, man, that's good. You know, those, they don't really stand out. They have a mild, they're not bad. They have a mildly sweet flavor to them. And from what I've read online, you don't want to eat a whole bunch of those raw. Not that they're poisonous or anything, but some of these plants, you know, if you eat a lot of it raw, it will, you know, can upset your stomach. So I have seen comments on that, but again, that might be by specific individuals. So I like them actually. Has a little mild trailside nibble. They're not bad. But I'll definitely have to try to make a wine or a jam out of them. I don't know what these are. I have seen these through here. Interesting, they don't really have leaves until down at the base. But I haven't seen those out here before, so that must be another fall plant. Oh, what's that there? Oh, he is old. Old, old, old. Very, very old. More wild strawberry bushes. Yeah, little guy. All sorts of pretty flowers out here today. This looks high and dry. We'll explore this stretch just a little bit. Although pretty sandy. I don't know if we're going to find much for mushrooms, but at least our feet aren't getting wet. Man, look at all the grapevines in here. Everything's just covered with them. Muscadine grapes. I miss the grape season too, due to my illness. I have a couple spots where there's both regular grapes, of course wild, and then the muscadines. And sadly, I was unable to do that this year. What are you gonna do? Go by some old farmland here. Boy, that's an old corral there. That is not used. That's been a long time since that held cattle. A barbed wire fence. Getting close, you can probably hear the road now. Again, we're going to make our way back to the car, so it's we might check out the campsite before we do. There is an old camp out here. Right, I shouldn't say old camp. There's a rustic camp out here, and I really want to get out here and check it out. So we'll see if it's underwater or not. If it isn't, we'll get in there and take a look at it. And we got some nice high ground in here. Got some shade. That's really nice. Now we can find a guy poking up in the pine needles. Oh, another old one. Broke right off. Bone dry, which is kind of interesting considering how wet everything is. But he's been here a while. And that shade feels good. Sun's coming up, getting warm. You guys see the tadpoles? That little tiny puddle is just teeming with tadpoles. Life everywhere, isn't there? Hey, bud. Thought maybe see some deer out here in the open, dry land, but thought maybe they'd be out getting some breakfast, but they are not. And deer are just as limited as we are as far as, I mean, certainly they'll go through the water like we will, but they prefer not to if they don't have to. I don't think anybody's going to be using the campsite. So these trails, there is rustic campsite here. This part's high. Ooh, watch out for stumps. I don't think we'll be using that one. But it's actually pretty nice. It's primitive, but it's got nice picnic tables in here. Fire pits. Plenty of room for tents. Now these have to be reserved. I would wager this time of year you can get them pretty easily. The one nice thing about this site, so this time of year in the evenings it gets down to, you know, maybe 70 degrees and it'll start getting cooler here, which is nice. One nice thing, if you notice, sturdy trees, a nice distance apart for the hammock. So truthfully, for me, for this time of year, I don't mind all the water, and I use my jungle hammock. And so this would actually be not a bad time of the year just to come do a little overnight. Matter of fact, when I get back from California next week, or from my California trip next week, I'll be down there about 10 days. When I get back, we might have to come out here and do a little overnighter. Do my first night in a hammock after my COVID recovery. That actually sounds quite appealing to me because it's easy to get to. Oh. Again, it would be easy to get to. and very comfortable with the tables, the fire pits, and the one pit is high enough, should stay underwater for a while, or above water, I should say. And there actually is another pit that will stay nice and high and dry, and a table that'll stay high and dry. So we'll have to come back here in about 15 days and check this out, see if it's still, you know, above water or if the water's overtaken it. So we're close to the truck now, and we probably did 2 miles. A lot of the trails that we hit were underwater. We couldn't get to them. A lot of the shortcuts were underwater. And I went through water. My feet are completely soaked through, but they were too bad. You know, it was more like, it would have been more like hiking through a small pond. So we decided that that was not on our agenda today. Again, this is the first time out since my COVID recovery. Hard to believe that a month ago they were preparing my wife for me not coming home, and here I am. So I got to tell you, I'm very thankful for all the kind words and support I've received from family and, of course, all my friends and all of you. Just a lot of kind, supportive words. And I'm so thankful to be out here foraging. And today we're not bringing anything home. It was more just about an adventure. We got some beautiful photos, some great footage. And that's why we call him Dozer, like bulldozer. So unaware of anything else. But we got out in the woods, beautiful day. And we're going to get out of here before it gets too darn hot. And who knows, maybe on the way home I'll find a fishing hole and we'll put the camera back on and try that out. But thanks a lot for tuning in today. Thanks again for the kind words over the last, you know, really 2 months. And now that I'm feeling better, once I get back from this trip from California, we'll get out in the woods and do some more foraging. And we'll get out and actually do some fishing this time of year. We'll get the kayak pulled out and see if we can get some fresh fish back in the freezer. And if I get time, I don't know that I'll have time for it, but if I get time in California, maybe we'll find a trail there and I'll bring you back in. So in the meanwhile, hopefully the next time you see Dozer and I, we'll be out doing something wild.